creationism, evolution.
Okay.
Are they one and the same, or should they be separate? What are your thoughts?
In my opinion, they're different. But also,
Do you believe in the idea that, like, when it comes down to, like, because me personally, my personal beliefs is that evolution and creationism are kind of hand in hand. Like, maybe the Big Bang Theory did happen, and maybe it was caused by a higher force, and maybe, you know, God giving, you know, these things intelligence and evolving normally is God in and of itself.
yeah.
You know, so
I get that.
they come together, like, because a lot of people say that, like, you know, the idea of magic versus science. What if like back then they couldn't describe what was going on, but it was still happening, you know, and they built stories up around it, and then when they started discovering it, what if that is still, you know, along the lines of being created by a higher power?
I get that. Well, you know, like that's what like St. Thomas Aquinas talks about in his like 5 proofs for God's existence. He talks about like the first mover, and so like if you make the assumption like everything came from something, so everything came from something, makes sense. Like we all came from our parents and their parents, and like you can go back, but at some point there was nothing. But if there's always nothing, then how could there ever be something?
Very true.
You feel me?
Chicken, egg.
Chicken, egg. So at some point there had to have been something that had always been.
Oh, like a force that had always been in the presence of what was happening.
Just what was going on. So like, because something can't come from nothing. So something had to have always been. And he says that that's one of the proofs we got.
No, we've talked about the stone date theory and how we assign to that.
Yeah.
I have this theory that the fruit in the Garden of Eden wasn't an apple, it wasn't LSD, it was a mushroom that they weren't supposed to have. And as they ate this mushroom, they weren't supposed to. Maybe Adam and Eve really did exist, and when they came down, that was one thing that they did eat that kind of increased their intelligence and had them believing in abstract thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, granted, they say that Adam was like, you know, they say that Adam, like I was told, I don't know if it's, I don't remember much because I haven't been part of, like, I haven't really been religious for a long time.
What are you talking to Catholics? So?
Yeah. Like, people say that, like, Adam was the one that, like, named off what the animals were and plants and stuff like that. I don't know if that's still true. But what if the fruit of knowledge was a mushroom that caused them to kind of want to create instead of, you know, wanting to create something of their own, which gave people their own godlike powers, you know? Where does the concept of God come from when everyone feels this innate feeling of this higher being, whether they're aware of it or not? Like, I remember when I was 4, I asked my mom, is the moon God? I didn't know shit about that, but
it's a kid question.
It pondered, but it was a ponder moment that, like, I was just like, what created this?
Yeah.
Instead of thinking, oh, this is just what it is.
I mean, that goes back to like this idea of like intelligent design. So the idea is like you're walking in a forest, and all of a sudden you find a pocket watch in the middle of this jungle or forest, and you're like, how did this thing get here naturally? Something had to put this here. You know, so a lot of people say that that's another reason for, like, you know, God or like some sort of higher being. That one's a little. It makes sense with like that analogy, but like obviously, like, you know, the pocket watch is inorganic. It's like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So going back to like creationism, evolutionism, and I'm only talking with like Roman Catholic Church here. They say like in the Catechism that the way you should understand Genesis and the Adam and Eve narrative is like, this is a story. This is not literally what happened.
You know, the Big Bang Theory is like an evolutionist thing, but the cataclysm is the Genesis, essentially, which is essentially the Big Bang Theory. An explosion.
Yeah. Let that be like, right? Yeah.
So it makes you think, like, why is there such a separation when those two links are right there?
Just misunderstanding, ignorance. That's what I would say. You know, because in my opinion, it makes sense. Because, you know, the Catholic Church says, like, Adam means man. Mm-hmm. And so, like, Adam and Eve are supposed to be understood as, like, just the, like, if you think of, like, species division, you know, it's like Homo sapiens, the species right before them. Adam and Eve are supposed to be, like, the first Homo sapien. Like, that's basically how the Catholic Church, like, asks you to understand this this narrative of Genesis, basically.
What if it's like, this is just me pulling shit out my ass,
yeah.
But what if Adam and Eve weren't humans at first?
Well, I mean...
What if it was like it makes you think of Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
You know, they took this ape and gave it they tried to give it intelligence, and the baby that was born was Caesar.
Yeah.
So what if it was like that? You know, because they did give that ape a name. I forgot the name, but they gave her a name. What if they gave Adam and Eve the name, and Adam and Eve were apes? You know, well, including evolution, and then their fruit of, you know, the stone ape theory.
Yeah.
Their fruit of knowledge was the mushroom.
See, I would just disagree, or I wouldn't disagree, but I would just say it's semantics, where you put Adam and Eve. But I would say to fit the narrative of Genesis, for them being the first man and woman, for them to be like this human species, you know what I'm saying? So for them to be like an earlier ape.
But maybe not even an ape, but like maybe they were like a different kind of ape.
Like some sort of like Neanderthalic male. Like that's what they were. Yeah. You know, scientifically, that's what they would have had to be.
Is that Homo erectus?
No, maybe. I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head, but like Homo sapien, like just Adam and Eve are supposed to be, like as the church understands them, to be like the very first of our species, the very first of like humanity. So obviously they're black too.
In Africa.
Yeah, so obviously they're black. What was I gonna say? And so what like this fruit is supposed to be is a representation of like our fall and our free will. And also, just a quick side note with what you were saying about like Adam is given dominion over like the plants and the animals. It's completely polar from like Eastern religions where we're just another like another entity. Yeah, another entity within like.
Do you fall in love with the Eastern religion belief or the Western religion belief? Because the Eastern religions, they pretty much teach coinciding.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have multi gods. A lot of them are polytheistic instead of monotheistic.
Yeah. I think with like we definitely were given dominion over the animals and the plants, obviously.
To an extent, yes.
I mean, completely. We have complete dominion over them.
I guess.
But with that comes our responsibility to take care of them. That's what I'm saying. Because, like, yes, we're in charge of them and we have control of them. But with that, we have a responsibility to take care of them.